what's the Project Rock? Talk to me about Project Rock.
Oh, Project Rock. It's well, now it's being rebranded something else, but it was just basically a bunch of friends, guys that I play with, that I know from other bands like Tim Ripper Owens. He was in Judas Priest when Alfred was out of the band. As a matter of fact, that movie Rockstar. It was
Yeah.
based on his story. He did an interview with some journalist in some magazine, and somebody took the story of him being just a kid that replaced this superstar, Rob Halford from Judas Priest, and for all of a sudden he went from a tribute band to actually being in the real band, and they made a movie out of that story. So, but he's an incredible singer, and then guys like Teddy Zigzag, who play with Guns N' Roses, keyboard player, and James Kotak, drummer from Scorpions, and Kerry Kelly, who played with Alice Cooper, and we would just go to Russia, deep into Russia, Siberia, Kamchatka, whatever, not what's considered San Francisco and L.A., which is St. Petersburg and Moscow. We really went in deep in there, and just bring music to the fans. These are. We're talking about what? It's been 20, 25 years since the fall of the Berlin Wall, and this is a whole different Russia. Forget about Putin and all the conflicts going on, politically. Let's talk about the people. People are just fantastic, and they love American music, and they love rock and roll. And one of the reason why they love it is because it was the music that they were not allowed to watch. There were no rock performers during the Cold War or music. It was all clandestine. You have to go in a basement, listen to the music with your headphones, and all of that. You made sacrifices. A lot of people went to jail, went to Siberia because of embracing American music. And one of the things that I found that was really interesting was, I noticed this because, being from Cuba, I was exposed to Afro-Cuban music, Afro being the key word. Then when I came to the United States, I started listening to blues. Then I was exposed to African blues, where it comes from. And I'm going, my goodness, this music, Latin music and blues come from the same place, Africa, and they brought here through, the slaves. I don't know, it's a terrible period, in history, but that's how we got our American music, through that. One of the things you have to take into consideration is that the slaves in the Caribbean were allowed to play their percussion instruments because, they were in Spanish plantations, whereas the plantations in the United States outside of Louisiana, which was French, they were not allowed to use their percussion instruments. So they, as a way to survive their sacrifice, the hardships of working in the fields, they would sing, And if you listen to traditional Cuban music and the blues, it's all 1-4-5 progressions. It's the same format, and I'm looking at it and saying, wow, how rich are the music of the United States is, that came out of this terrible times in our history, through slavery. And I think about not only that but us as individuals, when we go through bad times, if you look at a diamond, it's because it's being compressed. Our lives become compressed, and the ones that can actually survive that compression, at the end of it, we come up like diamonds. So if you listen to American music, you listen to the blues, you listen to jazz, all of that, it was a culture, a people that were compressed. Their lives were so hard that at the end of it, the diamond that came out was actually music, American music. It's the most true form of American music that there is: jazz, rock and roll, blues, R&B, gospel. the soulful gospel that we know, where singers such as Aretha Franklin came from, and so on. And this is something that the rest of the world does not have in common with us. If you go to Russia, there's no African artists that have that influence in them. You know what I mean? It's not part of their culture. So when they listen to the blues, they're hearing something that, yes, it's about hope and faith, because that's what was happening in the field when they were working, under such conditions, the hope and the faith that someday all of this was going to end and they were going to lead better lives. That is universal. And you can hear it in the music, and you can hear it even really in the music, in the notes that are being played, all the pentatonic blues, scales and riffs and everything that comes through that music. And when you take that to a country such as Russia that had their own period of hope and faith through music to be able to survive their lives, they connect with it in a way that even most of Americans today cannot connect with. Because right now we're connecting with electronic music created by computers. That's our reference. That's our connection. We are losing soul. We're losing our connection with our heart and our soul, and our spirituality even. Because this is, if you listen to blues and jazz, it's very spiritual music, because that's where it came from, spirituality. So then again, going back to Russia, one of the things that I learned from traveling there is that all of these dictators, communist dictators they were smart enough not to interfere with their faith. They knew that they could not fight God. So they turned like a blind eye to it, and they just let them keep their churches and keep their faith. And so when you travel through all these little towns, the most beautiful, ornate buildings, well kept, is the actual church, the local church. They're very spiritual people. It reminds me of Cubans. It's like this very tight knit culture. People really relate to each other. They help each other out, and they're very communicative with each other.